everyone, Lady Sapphire here. So I know the last couple of episodes we've been talking about kinks. Today I kind of want to talk about something a little bit more serious. Kind of got brought to my attention how little people understand about this topic, so I'm really excited to jump in and we'll see where this goes. So today we're going to be talking about sexual addiction. What is it? Is it truly a thing? Who's afflicted? And how can we deal with this? And how can you have a better life if this happens to be something that you're struggling with? So I hope you enjoyed my show, and here we go. So right from the get-go, I do want to disband some stereotypes and get into the fact that just because someone is sexually active does not mean that they are sexually addicted. It does not mean that they're struggling with this issue because they like to have sex. That has nothing to do with anything. What I'm discussing today is a compulsive disorder. It's when people feel a compulsive need to act out in self-destructive ways, which can come into a sexual aspect, a drug aspect, just a life choice aspect. I am not discussing someone who just happens to be a little bit more energized in the bedroom, because I do hear this a lot. I hear a lot of people saying, well, it's only women. Women have this issue. No, it's actually about 10% of the US anyway. This is our US stats. About 10% of United States men suffer and about 7% of women suffer. So this is not just women. This is not just men. It's rather close into who's affected. And I don't want this to turn into, if you have a friend who is very active, that you're going to be calling them an addict. That is not your call. It's not your place to say if they are acting out compulsively. Now, if you know they're being self-destructive, you can say something along the lines of, I think you're being self-destructive. I really want to see you live a happy life. I don't want you dying from diseases. Please play safe. You can't judge them for doing what they do, but you can encourage safety. Encourage your friends to always play safe so that they'll be your friends until you're 80 together and not dying of AIDS by 40. The other thing that this can lead to is depression and suicide. And now I'm going to explain why by explaining what this condition truly is. So when we're talking about a compulsive sexual disorder, we're talking about someone who probably doesn't even really enjoy sex. There's a shame aspect. They can't pathologically get past this innate shame or this feeling that to be sexually active is bad. So they're going to act out in sexual ways to rebel against whoever saying it's bad. So you'll see this a lot in highly religious families where sons or daughters might start behaving and acting out in dangerous ways with their sexuality because they're being told that they can't. They're being told that sexuality is wrong, thus to behave in any kind of sexual way is wrong, which is where the danger comes in. And part of what motivated me to start this channel in the first place. I want people to have a safe place to come and listen to the realities of sexuality, to have a space where they can feel like they can be accepted for who they are with someone who isn't going to judge them. And that is something that I think needs to be a bigger part of the world. Now, I do want to be careful with the safe space thing. I do think that people need to learn how to overcome adversity. But I do think that we have started to place so much judgment and so much shame upon a base human instinct that is dictated by testosterone and by nothing else than that, which is why we have drops in sexual urges throughout time, especially as us women, our testosterone levels begin to drop when we approach menopause. Thus, our sex drives might go down with it. That doesn't mean you can't get it back. That doesn't mean that through diet you can't replace what you're losing, but it can happen. Now, when you're talking about someone who is an extreme, like obsessive compulsive with it, they might do things like any person that comes in the room becomes a sexual object. Whether they actually act out on it or not, they're still objectifying everyone that walks in the room. This is men, this is women. If you have a guy friend who slept with 300 women and he acts like he's the Don Juan, probably dealing with a sex addict or someone who has a very unhealthy understanding of sex and sexuality as a whole. And that's where the problems come in, when you're dealing with someone who doesn't understand healthy sexuality. Now, I do want to say really quickly too that I have mentioned in previous videos the joy of the orgasm. And this in itself can be a little bit addicting. You just want it again and again and again and again because it's a wonderful experience. But please keep in mind that anything, if you get too much of it, it's no longer good for you. So if you are wrapping your whole life around when are you getting your next orgasm fix, you might be dealing with an addiction problem. You might be dealing with something that you might need to get some counseling for. And it's not something that we should be ashamed of, that we should feel like we have to explain ourselves to people. That is not necessary. You do you. You do what you gotta do. But if you know that your behavior is leading you down dangerous roads, then please seek attention. Seek a counselor, a psychiatrist, whatever you can afford or whatever you can get through the government. If you're in Canada, a lot of these things are covered through OHIP if you have a legit reason. If you're in the States, you can be referred to cheaper ones. But either way, there are options out there that you can find that will help you get better. And it doesn't mean that you got to be against sex or that sex is innately bad. It just means you need to find a way to control your compulsive behaviors before they turn more dangerous. Because there isn't a huge danger in just having a good time flirting with people and kind of objectifying people, but it will alienate you from people, and eventually it could turn into a more dangerous position. You could put yourself into a position that you can't get out of. You could maybe put yourself in a position to be raped or to be attacked or to just catch a disease or any other thing. Like, there's so many dangers wrapped into sexuality as well as fun. So just make sure that you're always aware of where you sit on the spectrum. If you have a high sex drive and you're comfortable with that and you know you're healthy about it, props to you, power to the people. I'm not judging anybody for having a high sex drive. What I am saying, though, is that we need to drop these stereotypes that just because a woman has sex with a few men, she's a sex addict, but a man can go out and have sex with hundreds of women and he's just a Don Juan. No, the woman who's out there exploring her sexuality and understanding where and what she wants and where she wants to go in life, that is perfectly fine and that is healthy. There is nothing wrong with exploring your sexuality and learning what you want in life. But once it starts to interfere with your life, that becomes a problem. So if you are doing things like watching porn 5 times a day or masturbating more than 5 times a day, that becomes detrimental to your daily life. It's not that I care that you're masturbating 5 times a day. If you're a guy, your sperm count might drop because that's a lot. And if you're a girl, you might lose the inhibition to have fun with your partner because you're having fun with yourself and reaching the orgasm alone, which is where a relationship problems come in when someone is like preferring to go to their porn than to hang out with their partner. That is a problem. But I don't want people to think that just because someone has a high sex drive, or even for me, like I'm here talking about sexuality twice a week, people are going to make these assumptions that I'm just some crazy sex addict that just wants to talk about it all day. But no, in reality, I'm just a normal person who understands the responsibility we all have for ourselves, and that we aren't teaching our kids. We aren't teaching the older generations. Nobody's being taught the new information. Like, even with the sex addiction, it is not legally its own thing in the disease category. It's only under compulsive disorders. And it's only there because when you have a compulsive disorder, it implies that treatment is needed. And yes, talking to somebody, relieving yourself of that shame and that negative space that you've wrapped sexuality into is great. No one needs to be lost in a cloud of darkness, feeling like they're wrong for just being themselves. But when we're talking about this, people tend to jump to these weird conclusions, like it's always women. It's always, that they're just not happy, that they're not able to get happy, they're just not happy with themselves. No, they are somehow or another confused about what sexuality really means, about what a healthy sex life really looks like. And I don't think we should shame people for not knowing what they don't know. You just don't know what you don't know. So I do think that if you know someone who's in the situation that they're struggling with just an addiction or compulsion to misbehave in sexual ways that are dangerous to them or dangerous to your relationship, if you happen to be dating someone like this, then make sure that they're aware that you support them, that you want them to get better, and you want to find a way to have a healthy sex life with them. They don't have to give up what they love, but let's try to incorporate the whole dynamics of the relationship into that. So if you're dealing with someone like this, I would like to give a quick warning. Do not add more shame. So if you have someone who's a sex addict, or a compulsive sexual misbehavior, then please don't add to their shame by making them feel like crap because they're out watching porn every day and you're sitting there in need. There is nothing wrong with expressing that you have your needs, but don't add to the shame. They're already struggling with shame and struggling with understanding what healthy sexuality looks like. So don't add to that. Don't make it worse for them because you'll only be detrimental to your own relationship. Encourage them to get help. If that means going as a couple until they're comfortable with the counselor or the psychiatrist, until they're willing to go on their own, do what you got to do to encourage them to get better, but don't add to the shame cycle. It'll just spiral in their heads and it'll just escalate the problem. So please make sure you're always aware of that. Now, down below, I will have a link to a really quick, just 2-minute video that really quickly describes it much better than I am to what it actually is. Because right now I'm more talking about how to deal with them and how to identify if you're dealing with that or with just a person with a high sex drive. There's a huge difference. But there will be a video down below if you want to get more in-depth in the medical aspect of it. And there will also be a link below to an article that I find rather damaging, but I do want to show it out there just to kind of explain why I felt the urge to make this video, because people are throwing labels on things without understanding what they're doing. So there will be an article below that if you want to read for a good laugh, go for it. But there's not a whole lot of actual evidentiary science there. It's just going into, oh, your person's watching a lot of porn or your teenager's having sex, they must be sex addicts. And that is not true. Teenagers especially do have high sex drives. They are literally reaching their peak of sexual development, and it can get very tricky. And I understand if you're highly religious, it might be a misconception to think that because your child is become sexually active, they are acting out compulsively, but they are not. And you will know the difference. You will understand the difference if you actually see true compulsion versus they just have a sex drive. So let's not shame people. Let's remove that shame, because once that shame veil lifts off sexuality, we will see a huge decline in these kind of diseases, in these kinds of things, because they are hugely based into shame, into the spiral that people create, that it is bad to have sex, it is bad to want to release yourself into sexuality, thus you must get destructive to get what you want. And that is not true. There are lots of very fun, healthy ways to express your sexuality, and even on the porn front, there is no harm in watching porn. But if you are overdoing it, if you are going to the point where every single day you must sit down with your porn when your girlfriend or your husband or your boyfriend or whatever are sitting in the other room, that is problematic. You are not having a full, rich sexual life, and you won't find true fulfillment, which is why many people who deal with these kind of issues are highly depressed. They're dealing with a lot of esteem problems. They're just dealing with so many issues, and it has to be exerted somehow. And sadly, in this case, it gets exerted into their sex lives in very destructive ways. So let's remove the shame. Let's not judge people for being different than ourselves. Love each other as always. And Please come back and watch my videos again next week. I release Tuesdays and Thursdays between 8 and 10, and I will be getting back to kinks next week. I just had to take a break on this. I kind of had a conversation with a woman on a bus, and she kind of got me going a little bit in means of what sexual addiction is, and she was a little bit misinformed. So I really wanted to make this video to inform others of what they're misinterpreting in this kind of information. And I respect the woman I talked to. I really think she was full of really wonderful information, but she was a little bit outdated in her thoughts, and I've heard her arguments from many people before, so it just inspired me today. I had to do this video, and I had to talk about this because I'm so sick of this. A woman has sex with 2 people, she's a sex addict. A man has sex with 300 men, he's a Don Juan. It's bull. Anyone who's dealing with compulsive disorders are just dealing with compulsive disorders. It really doesn't matter, male or female. It really doesn't matter if we're talking about alcohol and drugs or if we're talking about sex. It's still a compulsive disorder created by someone with a low self-esteem and a low self-worth. So they try to find some way to express themselves, usually in some kind of self-detrimental way. So I hope you enjoyed this video. If you know someone like this, I hope you share this video to them. And if you're dealing with this, I really hope that I kind of helped you see that this is not something you need to be ashamed of. There's a rather high number of people dealing with it, and it all comes down to how you decide to deal with it, how you decide to embrace yourself in a real way. Do you want to embrace yourself, get healthy, be happy, or do you want to stay in a rut? That is your choice. I'm not going to judge whatever choice you want to make. It is your choice to make. But I hope that I can help get some people out of their ruts and understand that they're not alone, that many people are dealing with many kinds of issues, and that we all need to embrace that and learn to respect each other for that. And if you know someone who's getting help, encourage them. Don't make them feel like crap because they are seeking out help, because they acknowledge there is a problem within and they need to find a solution. That's something that should be rejoiced about. Rejoice that your friend is trying to find a way to be happy in their own skin, just like everyone deserves to be happy in their own skin. And yeah, so that's it for today, guys. Hope you enjoyed my video. Bye.